of the President's Delivery Unit. Allow me to welcome NZIOKA Waita of Momentum Africa LLP, a public policy and external. Don't tell the JSC that I told you this. That about my age. They said, "Why do you want to such a young age? Surely your time has not yet come." And I said, one, it is unconstitutional to rate me on the basis of my age. And two, it is my experience and delivery that counts. And three, young people under 40 are actually the captains of industry and leading the civil sector. So ask not what my age is, but what I can do for this great institution. Now, let us continue. He is the immediate past Chief of Staff in the Executive Office of the President in the government of the Republic of Kenya under His Excellency Uhuru Kenyatta's administration. As the founding head of the President's Delivery Unit, NZIOKA was a key driver of the government's Big Four agenda and played a critical role in coordinating the successful implementation of key national government programs and projects during the Kenyatta administration. By way of profession, NZIOKA is an advocate of the High Court of Kenya and a certified public secretary. He is a graduate of law from the University of Sheffield and holds a master's degree in computer and communications law from Queen Mary University of London. Again, why did you veer off the practice of law? Because tech is the future. NZIOKA has held several senior leadership roles in the private sector, with the most recent being the Director of Corporate Affairs at Safaricom, a position held for 4 years prior to joining the national government in Kenya. He has also held a number of non-executive director roles in the asset management and technology space. More recently, NZIOKA has taken up strategic advisory roles in the fintech sector, and many of you are in that sector, I've noticed, where he sits as a trustee in Loop Digital Financial Services Payment Company, a subsidiary of the NCBA Bank. He has recently joined TapTapSend, a US-based remittance company, as their advisor for East Africa and the Horn. In both his private and public engagements, NZIOKA is very passionate about community service, and aside from being a former founding trustee of the Safaricom Foundation, has sat on the board of 2 other non-profit organizations, namely the African Braille Center, which provides specialized Braille reading material for the visually impaired, and Alive and Kicking Kenya, a socio-charitable trust registered in the United Kingdom and having a local office in Kenya. NZIOKA is a conservationist at heart and is currently serving as an honorary warden of Kenya's Wildlife Service. He's a champion for empowering communities to understand how their carbon credit potential can create sustainable livelihoods for them whilst protecting Kenya's fragile biodiversity. Right? So, the profile, now the man. Sir, I think all of us really want to hear from your heart. We want to connect with you, with your experiences, with your role. And we have about 20 minutes. Have a quick fireside chat and then a broader conversation. In order to be very authentic, I want to invite you all to observe COFISI Chatham House Rules, the CSA Chatham House Rules, because sometimes when we sit in the positions that we do, we're not able to pass on information unless we establish trust. And I think we can already say that we've established trust here. See, I've told you some of my secrets in that interview room. I think that let's hold confidence for one another. Karibu sana.
Thank you, Anshuka. The government of Kenya has 3 arms. It has the legislature, it has the executive arm, and it has the judiciary. The judiciary is a government which you need to give her another round of applause. And hers is perhaps one of the more complex sides of government, because with MPs you can see them coming a mile away. With government bureaucrats, they're ring-fenced by certain rules, so it's also easy to see them. But for the judiciary, there's a lot of mystery and mystique. And speaking as a lawyer, you know, you pay deference to the Chief Justice and call her the Chief Justice. For me, it's your ladyship. Bowing from very far, because I wouldn't have gotten my practice. It's really nice to be here this evening, and today is the youngest one in all my meetings, because the average age of your typical public service, never before in the history of the Republic of Kenya, from 1963 to the day guidance that was placed on us by the President, the head of the public service, the executing. And those are the people I needed around me. I just needed mercenaries. People who you can deploy. I think the summary was given. I spent most of my career in Safaricom. It's a company that I love dearly. And I spent my time, I used to do like Roman numerals. Every time a CEO of Airtel would leave, I would say, another one down, another one down. By the time I left, they were number 11. And it's because we said, you will not operate in Kenya while we are here. And that is a commitment that I was employed to deliver on. And that is part of the reputation that earned me a job in the public service. The ability to keep things and problems at bay, and to be able to see and anticipate the actions of opponents, and to manage the response from the organization or from the principal. Basically to prepare them to receive bad news, to prepare them to go on the offensive, to prepare them to be able to be their best, so that they are not focusing on things which are not their strengths. They are focusing really on projecting their strengths. So if they are very articulate and good public speakers, give them the best speech. Make sure whatever they are getting is the best quality, best research document, quality controlled, fact checked, so that when they go out there and do their thing, you know, they're doing it with the full confidence that whatever they're reading has been checked, triple checked, double checked, and done for them. Those 15 years were, I think, where I cut my teeth, working for very good, inspirational leaders, leaders who are very results oriented, leaders who were very singular-minded in terms of the objectives that they wished to achieve. Michael Joseph, as a case in point, was determined to build a network at all costs to be the biggest and the best. Bob Collymore was determined to make sure that Safaricom was the most loved brand, and he was customer obsessed. He didn't care about the network. He just said, look, so long as the network is built, we're paying engineers to keep it up and running. My job is to make sure that the customers understand what we are committing to them. So he was really customer obsessed. Now, coming from one leader who was really about these things need to be done by this time, to another one who says it's not just doing it on time, it needs to look like this, it needs to have this quality, it needs to look this feel, this is how it needs to be perceived, this is how it needs to go down, it needs to be acceptable to this range of people. You know, I first had the word stakeholder engagement with Bob, because he was all about stakeholders. He was all about understanding the landscape, knowing who you could see, more importantly, who you couldn't see. Who are those people influencing what's happening around you that you are not able to identify immediately. And the only process you can go through is a process of stakeholder mapping, engagement, and then understanding, okay, let me segment these guys and understand what they mean to us and to our future as an organization. In 2015, after completing what was a very complex project jointly with the government of Kenya, and this is a project that was initiated after the most unfortunate events of the Westgate terrorist attack. And the security services in Kenya opted to change the posture of the police, equip them more, and go through a major modernization program, which involved all these cameras you see all over Kenya, all over Nairobi. Maybe many of you have not seen the police vigilance house. They have a huge network operations center where they can see almost 1,000 cameras. They know if your car gets stolen, and the key in the number plate, as soon as it hits one light somewhere, it picks up. And that was a project that was delivered by Safaricom. Very complex, against a number of procurement interests, vendor difficulties, political interference, and all manner of things. But we committed to the government that we'll get it done on time and within budget. And that was I was the vanguard for that program and got it done. When I joined the government of Kenya, I was given a job which at the time I didn't understand. So I was called and told, yes, you're going to be the delivery secretary. And I had the discussion that I had with my employer. When I was done, I didn't still feel like I knew what was expected of me. And then I went to see the head of public service, who equally was a bit foggy about what it was we were supposed to do. And the president said, you know, just give it a week or two. I'm going to send some people to you, spend some time with them. They'll do some benchmarking for you, and then you come back and you tell me whether you now understand what it is that I'm expecting from you. And I was introduced to some officials from another government, and they told me what they do and how they got there and how they structured themselves in order to focus, to help the government prioritize better. Because the government wants to do
your budget is this small. Your time is ticking. Every day, newspapers are on your back, MPs are on your back, opposition is on your back. Court injunction after court injunction after court injunction. Your programs are thrown into the wind. How do you get the government to sit still, focus, sift the wheat from the chaff, and be able to still get a few things over the line? With all these challenges, because nothing stops for you. Nothing will stop. The opposition won't stop. The MPs won't stop being greedy. The economy will go the way it goes. Tomorrow the banks will wake up and say interest is 30%. That time you promised your citizens all manner of good things. Now that has been put on hold. But nothing stops. You still have to run the country. You still have to get things done. How do you get a government to prioritize? That was my job. To basically sit still with the executive and ask them, out of this list of 100 things, what are the 5 or 6 that you feel must be done no matter what?
And going through that prioritization where leaders, because of what they know about their country and their people, everything is somehow important. Do I let go of this housing? Do I bring modernization of police? Do I deal with nurses and doctors? Do I build new hospitals? Do I finish the expressway? Do I do rural roads in Magadi or wherever it is? You know? Do I buy another ndege for KQ? Do you know, all these things are all existing at the same time, all important to 1 or 2 stakeholders. There are those who will tell you, Mr. President, you must do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's very important. Now the president is one person, the principal is one person. The people giving information are hundreds. Where does the quality control happen? So put yourself in your shoes. Your principal is running an organization. He has direct reports, or he or she has direct reports. Those direct reports have direct reports. Maybe somewhere in the foolishness of the office policy, they said, my door is open door. Anybody come and talk. So the cleaner will come and give you gossip. Somebody, oh, you, this is happening, Huko, you be careful, that one is stealing from CG, what. By the time the CEO gets home, his mind is full of junk. But he still has real problems to solve, shareholder value to deliver. What is the job of the chief of staff? Do you understand? So, this job is not a nice job. And if people like you, you are doing it wrong. Because you are not there to pander to people. Neither are you there to bully them. But honesty requires some level of brutality. Because somebody must be able to tell the king that he is naked. At the risk of being killed, you know, as a messenger, you are likely to be shot with your message. And that's always a very tricky job for chiefs of staff. That's why many of them die on their swords. Because you had the unfortunate duty to pass on information, and the message was not liked, and the messenger, as a consequence, has left a bad taste in the mouth of the principal. You are telling them that the feedback from the staff is that your new policy on this thing is not going down well. You need to change course. However married you are with this direction, you need to change course. Now, how many of you have had the opportunity to give bad news to your boss on something that's very close to their hearts? So was it easy?
I thought it was a hand-raising exercise.
Yeah.
Nobody else did.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, it wasn't great.
Yeah.
It wasn't fun.
Oh, but you're still here.
I'm still here.
Okay. So you managed it well. My job was multifaceted. So I started off as the secretary for delivery. I was employed at Job Group V, which is the same level as cabinet. I sat in the cabinet of Kenya for 7 years. I did not miss a single cabinet meeting. I helped to set the agenda, to prioritize, to whittle out decisions that needed to be made. There was, in our hierarchy, a direct reporting line to the president, but a dotted reporting line to the head of the public service. The head of the public service is the head of the bureaucracy of government. So you don't write letters, you don't initiate memos, you don't give directives unless they are sanitized within that. Letters in government carry a lot of weight. They can take you to jail. So you really have to be extremely careful where you place a comma or a full stop. Your training in grammar can get you summoned in front of an oversight committee in the National Assembly or in the Senate. It can also get you in court, having to explain why this comma, maybe what you meant to say was and or maybe, but you skipped it. And they said, so you took the entire budget for yourself, you know? Simple things like that. And when I started off, I had the duty of building a team from scratch, working with ministries to help cascade or to filter through what the president's priorities were, having to deal with issues around why is my portfolio not the priority? You know, why is my program and project not the priority? Why is it that we are focusing on medical equipment to 45 level 5 hospitals across Kenya? Why aren't we dealing with my elaborate strategy document preparation, which is going to cost 1 billion shillings to produce a piece of paper? You know, why are we not dealing with my funding project of creating a new building for whichever parastatal, and that building is over budget 10 times. You know, they're putting up a 30-story building costing 10 billion shillings that's going to have zero revenue. It's just a drain on the exchequer. But you want us to remove money from hospitals to go build your vanity project. And the ministers would throw a tantrum. How dare you have budget reallocated, you know? But you tell them the budget has gone to hospitals. By the time we were we got into office, I joined the president 2 years after he was elected. In 2015, you could not get dialysis in Eldoret at the referral hospital. The queue, they had 9 beds. Nairobi at KNH had about 30 beds. Kenya, the Republic of Kenya, had 39 dialysis machines functional and a queue of about 10,000 waiting to get their chance. Anyone here who has a relative who has gone through kidney failure, severe diabetes, or hypertension requiring them to go for blood work, you know the pain of waiting for dialysis, even in a private hospital. So when we told the president, it is essential that we move resources away from non-critical programs into programs that will impact and change the lives of Kenyans. However difficult the politics will be, let's deal with it. Now, the people who surround the principal are not just exclusive to the chief of staff. There are many people, the head of your organization should be wise enough to surround themselves with a blend of skill sets. People who bring different things to the table. Some might be very honest, some might be good at numbers, some might be good at listening, others might have very deep networks in places that you need to access. So typically, a leader will be surrounded by a number of advisors. My job was to coordinate. In the second term, was to coordinate and bring synergy to the advice that was coming to the principal. So this is advice ranging from international diplomacy, economic policy, dealing with bilateral partners, multilateral institutions, managing chemistry between, they say the judiciary and parliament are independent. The executive's view is, yes, you are independent, but codependent and interdependent. So one cannot exist without the other. Those relationships were filled with a lot of tension, but the country needed to function because the sum of the parts is greater than the individual parts. So keeping Project Kenya going in the right direction was more essential than the ego battles that were happening between the different sections. And it was important to always keep a back channel. So part of the job of a chief of staff is to allow your boss to say, I think you're an idiot. But the chief of staff will later on come to you and say, well, later on, we go and process it. We deal with it kivyetu. We just go and deal with it the way we know how to deal with it. So things are never what they appear to be. And that's something and this I speak for government and maybe for large corporations. Sometimes things are never really what they appear. There's always something cooking behind the scenes. As a chief of staff, you need to be extremely perceptive You need to be able to read body language. You need to be able to read non-verbal cues. Your boss, this job is very interesting. You can be doing extremely intellectual things on one day, extremely intellectual things, and on other days you're doubling up as not a bodyguard, but like to take the hits, like a human shield. So picture a state function. People are talking, mingling as they would either before, after, or during official pleasantries. And unfortunately, people with the wrong chemistry end up in the vicinity of your principal, angling to execute or to pass on a completely unpalatable message that you know has the potential to ruin the rest of the day. And you have to find a way to throw yourself in the middle of that discussion. Somehow, gracefully. Your Excellency, there is a call from London. And exit stage left. You know, simple things of that nature. Because you don't need to be told that there is some level of discomfort over here, and you need to be able to intervene. Now, does that need a PhD from Harvard? No, it doesn't. But you're now using a different set of skills to execute your job as a chief of staff. My remit, and I don't think this has happened before since Francis Modaura, I was responsible for managing the team of advisors. And the team of advisors included public policy teams, helping to review cabinet positions before they were embedded and came for approval. I was responsible for my team, the delivery unit, which had another section head. I was responsible for what we call the Office of Budget Management, which was a shadow office that existed within the presidency to read the budget before it is read and to basically tell the president whether his priorities have been included, are they funded, where has the money been moved. The budget involves a lot of tinkering. What you finally see appearing in the newspapers or as final budget read by the minister is something that has been done so much ukarabati. And the ukarabati happens up until the minute that the president signs the bill into law. It can change even en route from the Attorney General's office to State House. And somebody needs to read anything and everything before it is placed before the principal. The only things we never read were the things that came from the people who look after us. But the rest, you have to review, check, make sure that nobody's making a fool of your principal. And it happens a lot in government. In government, the first thing you must do is read what has been brought to you. Never sign anything until you've read it like 1,000,000 times and understand where the guy who wrote this memo, what was happening in his head, and who was telling him what to write. And what is the result of the signing of this memo? What happens next? You must think through all those things. So when you go for, say, something as mundane as the ASK show, a speech must be read because you don't have functions in Kenya unless a speech is read, right? And in the speech, as has been the tradition in our country, is that our leaders rule in two ways. One is they rule through the laws that are made by National Assembly, and they rule through administrative fiat. So they make directions and give directives. So every time you hear the head of state saying, And as a consequence, I hereby direct as a loaded gun. And you need to know who armed it, where did the bullets come from, and who is it aimed at. And is it going to create a problem for us? So you would find that some bureaucrat somewhere in some ministry, because they are trying to unlock funding, which maybe has very poor oversight of governance, will want to say, I hereby direct that the government of Kenya immediately procures the following blah, 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 blah. That was not a directive from the president. That was some guy in the ministry who wrote in the speech that this and this needs to happen. Why? Because there is 100 million that needs to be unlocked for some other specific activity. If in the quality control of the president's text, you're not looking at it, you can imagine the damage that then ensues. Then you have somebody called the Office of the Auditor General who writes a 10-page on that particular directive that you also now are all struggling to remember how it got into the text. Tuko pamoja? You can't sleep. If you get a lot of sleep, that's another thing. Maybe this job is not made for you. Because you're supposed to be the shock absorber for your principal. So you need to really look at these things, analyze them in depth, and be able to say, this is kosher, or agree to disagree. By the way, the boss doesn't need to agree with everything you say. In fact, in many cases, they'll listen, and then they'll say, I've heard you, but maybe there are other factors that you're not aware of that are going to inform the next steps. So you also need to be able to read that cue and know when to stop pushing a particular agenda. Are we together? I will say more in our fireside.
Yeah.
I hope that creates some excitement.
Amazing. Please have a seat, because we want to switch it up with, of course, a conversation from you. But before we come to that, from my own experience, and I'll tell you that, of course, the executive is not known to have chiefs of staffs besides the chief of staff to the president. But I carried very proudly a title, Chief of Staff and Policy Advisor to a cabinet secretary. And the question becomes, when you are appointed chief of staff, there's a principal chief of staff relationship. One, how are you inducted into your role, or how are you inducted into your role, or how did you induct yourself into the role?
Okay, I never started off as chief of staff. I started off as secretary to delivery. I then became deputy head of the public service, a position I held from 2016 to 2018 on the 18th of January at 3 p.m. It was not a role I was expecting. In our advisory to the president to help him look at his second term a little bit more efficiently, we had made some recommendations, structural changes to his office, structural changes to the way cabinet functioned and cabinet committees functioned. No one was quite sure what he was going to implement, so he had a wide range of options at his disposal. One of those was to create some headroom between the secretary to the cabinet, the chief of staff, and the head of public service, largely because each of those roles are entirely all-consuming. Secretary to the cabinet is a full-time job. Chief of staff is a full-time job. And head of public service, in and of itself, is like 20 of those jobs put together. And we made some recommendations, and we were not sure what permutations he was going to take. So when he then made that announcement, of course, a lot of questions came to the fore in terms of the scope, because everybody thought maybe it should be paired with the secretary to the cabinet, it should be paired with head of public service. Now, none of those jobs were vacant. And you know, you don't even talk about it. When the office holder is there, you don't talk about it because you're inviting problems. I think in my mind, because I had so much proximity with the president over the years coming to that announcement, it was a natural progression, because one of the things we did as a delivery unit was to take charge of his calendar, because the calendar had a number of facets to it. You know, on a typical day, there will be a wide range of people that the principal would need to see, public engagements that they would need to get into. But my question was always, how many of them are purposed towards the achievement of the priorities that we have set out? So we need you in Mariakani, because we need to launch the Mariakani-Bamba Road. You have 92 days to the general election. You must be in Mariakani. So kick out everything else that is on the program. That interaction with the program and the diary keepers at State House, because the diary is kept by, it's a consultation of quite a number of people to get a diary that makes sense for the principal. Because as I said, we are not the only influencing factor. That proximity, I think, prepared me for the role. I had the benefit of working with one of the longest serving public servants who had served 2 heads of state prior to President Kenyatta. And he was not shell-shocked by anything, so nothing would faze him. And learning from him was also a privilege, because he would say, calm down, young man. You know, let's sit down and look at this problem properly. And I think a lot of my induction happened in those kind of sittings of calm down, don't be trigger happy, let's reason through this together.
I think understanding the intricacies that come with a job, which really is a permutation of the principle without just getting into that space. Knowing about the role, what came of it in government. If you became chief of staff at Safaricom, with your previous experience in government, what would be your starting point?
Let me explain something. I would not accept the job, first and foremost. I much prefer to be the decision maker. Let me put it that way. I much prefer to be the decision maker. I took the chief of staff's job because it helped me push my team and protect them from interference. What it gave me was the ability to give that team the air cover that they needed to navigate a very complex bureaucracy in a very tricky period, in a transition period. 2 years in, when you start becoming lame duck, and you do need to be able to execute programs right up to the end. So for me, it was a platform. It was also a privilege to serve a president who was so committed to his people. So for me, in that capacity, I would take it. At Safaricom, I would rather remain as a conscience or an advisor, and that's the job as a corporate affairs person that I was doing. But to be a full-time chief of staff to the CEO, I wouldn't survive.
But how would you, because my own experience is nobody gives you a manual. A chief of staff manual does not exist. And I was having a conversation earlier, and I was saying I hate operations. I hate being operational. And so when I came into the judiciary as the chief of staff, what they were used to was an operational chief of staff. But I said to the Chief Justice, I want to lead your vision and I want to lead strategy. But I will set up an operational team to run the affairs of the office. And based on your introductions, a lot of you are new to the role, are coming into the role, defining the role. And I guess the question is, if you didn't have a choice, if you came into the role, it's a new role, it's in the private sector, it's somewhat operational, somewhat administrative, somewhat tea making, somewhat laundry cleaning. How would you define it? And how would you navigate that conversation with the principal?
For you to be picked as chief of staff, something has been seen. They've seen something in you. And they've seen a quality in you that maybe lends itself to making life easier for the principal or making the principal more effective in their job. For me, the role of a chief of staff is not an end in itself. It is a transit point in your career. It cannot be your aspiration. You cannot tell me here today that I want to be the chief of staff when I grow up. I'll fire you if I was your boss. It is a recognition that you have a broad-based talent, that you are able to network at multiple levels. You're able to take a chief executive who operates in the stratosphere and still be able to connect them to the lowest person in the organization to make sure that they're never disconnected from the reality of where they are. This job doesn't have very many, it has no four corners. It's so undefined. I don't know if you've ever heard this phrase where they say, you serve at the pleasure. That's something they say in government, where they say you serve at the pleasure. So if your boss is scatterbrained, like a genius, like a mad genius sort of person, then your job is to bring coherence and to allow them to be brilliant, and you cover for the scatterbrained bit, so that it's the brilliance that comes out, you know? If your boss is too curt, too ruthless, too difficult, then you must be able to soften. Because if the boss disconnects themselves from relationships in the organization, they will end up stuck in an ivory tower. So you have to be able to be that person who does iyo ukarabati. But if you are clever as a chief of staff, you will know what everybody else wakes up to do. And in some cases, know it better than them. So that when you leave that role, you are so enriched in terms of your career progression, your self-actualization, your ability to see things in multiple dimensions. It's such a privilege. And by the way, you're not a psycho. You're not going there to and we must disabuse this thing, because some bosses also get confused. I want a chief of staff, and then you are tying up some ex-Dalberg McKinsey person writing stupid things, you know, and using their PhD to, you know, to run errands which you should really have given to somebody else. Exactly what Washuka has said. You notice these gaps and you say, the first thing I'm going to do to the principal is I'll get you somebody to make tea. I'll get you a messenger or whatever it is that you need to run those soft errands. I'll get you a secretary who is the most polite person, will answer all your calls, will never fall asleep, will never miss an appointment. You know, those are the things I'll do. Then now you can now get in charge. In government, that thing is called the private office. So the private office, the back office, you are an extension of the brain of your principal. So you're like a sounding board. You're a safe space where they can really critique their own thinking before they voice it into a public environment. So you end up picking, you learn by osmosis. Because imagine if every day you read, let's say you don't know accounts, but every day you must read a management report coming through from your finance team. And you have to learn what the management accounts look like. You have to learn when things are going into the red. You have to learn what the procurement guys are looking at. You must know what the cash flows are. You end up learning so much. And then you need to look at an incident report from your engineering guys. There's been a failure in your systems, blah, 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 particularly for the fintech guys. When you wake up in the morning and you're told some server in Pakistan is down and your whole system is inaccessible. You know, how do you know those things so well that you're able to brief and you're also able to moderate the messenger? And you tell these guys, your head of IT, Hapa, the mood is like this. So if you want a result, come and say, deliver the same news, but couch it in this particular way. How would you know that unless you've become a jack of all trades?
Two final questions before we turn it to the brilliant audience here. You go into an organization in the private sector, in the public sector, in the civil sector. And of course, you know, you work very closely with the principal. There are many, many interests around you. How do you negotiate and how do you define your worth to the organization? How do you make sure that you're in cabinet? You're not the one delivering the paper so that your boss can come and sit and you walk out of the room. How do you remain in the room? How do you find your voice? And how do you make that voice as loud and as crisp as it needs to be? Because I've seen this tendency that, you know, are my papers ready? And of course you escort, you get into the meeting, you leave the papers and you step out. But there comes a time when you actually need to be the person opening the meeting and handing it over to your principal and taking charge and ensuring that you can define the priorities. How do you navigate that? What would your advice be?
Number one, when you get the job, ask your boss to define outcomes. What is the picture of success? What are you looking for? Because you need a true north. Where are we going? Now, if he says this is the things, or he or she says this is where we are going, that becomes your true north. This is what we are doing, and everything we are doing is purposed towards that objective. Now, you must stay true to the true north, and you must also use your office to keep your principal reminded of what true north needs to look like. And in a way, you need to read them, you need to understand them. So for us, some things happen in public, most things happen in private. If there's a blunder made in public, you leave it. You know, leave it. You deal with it behind the scenes. Don't interject to correct or to do something where just chill. That's how you'll get thrown out of a meeting. But at the same time, if you're able to add value beyond, so not only have you brought the papers, but you have an insight. Say, I've read these things, they look like this, maybe you might want to watch out for one or two these things. You need to know what's happening in that meeting. You know, all of you cannot come to be surprised at a meeting. You should never go for a meeting where you're not sure what is going to happen. You really need to have done your homework, your research. You need to know who's coming in, who are the hardliners, who are the people you need to watch out for, who are the guys you zimmer the mic when it gets to them. You know, how do you do these things? That way, your boss knows, I cannot leave this person behind. They can't leave you. After the meeting, when you get a moment, you do a debrief, and you say, you know, that went well, but there are one or two things you picked up. So-and-so was disengaged. So-and-so doesn't seem to agree with you. You may need to persuade them more, maybe on bilateral basis, not in an open room. You know, you read those things, and then you've added value to the principal. So you did more than just bring the file. You've done so much more. And I think there, at that point, if the principal doesn't see value in your work, then you suffer silently until you get the next job.
Which brings me actually to the final question before we come to you. How do you manage that transition? First of all, how do you know it's time to leave? It's time for divorce. And how do you make it easy or easier?
I can only give you a real life example. I had one of the highest paying glamorous jobs in the private sector. But I would wake up in the morning and I would not see my purpose. And everyone would ask me, what's the problem? You're getting a salary, you're getting this, what is the problem? But I couldn't see my purpose. I could always see my purpose. In the 15 years that I've been working for, I knew. So after you've annihilated your competition, you've annihilated the regulator, you've annihilated everything becomes, I don't know if you ever watched this movie called The Groundhog Day, where it becomes repeat, repeat, repeat. You can almost predict what your week will look like because the challenges will be, some guy will raise questions, you are dominant. Some other one will say, you're too expensive. And you go through the cycle of, okay, let's meet this one, pull him kando, dominant, kill that thing in Bunge. And the cycle repeats. At what point, and you realize, actually, the organization can do this without you, quite effortlessly, because they've seen, they know the modus operandi, there's no proprietary secret to how to deal with these things. What individual value do you bring anymore? And when you go home at night, do you feel fulfilled? The minute you wake up and you don't feel like you're adding value to your job, to yourself, you must really pause and reflect. Because the worst thing to do is to deteriorate when you're still in the job. Because your employer will pick it up, and all of a sudden you start seeing your performance reviews not looking like what they used to look like. Because you're not being honest with yourself, but also you're not good at camouflaging what it is you're really feeling. And for guys, this is not a chief of staff issue, this is more like a career thing. And for corporates which eat you and spit you out based on performance, you have to be very cautious. As soon as you get to that point where you feel that your heart is not in it, and maybe in some cases the fix is a lateral move within the same organization, additional roles and responsibilities, maybe you've run out of the challenge. So you explore, first of all, the standard HR playbook. How do we, improve ourselves? If the problem is deeper than your HR playbook, then it's a point of a self-reflection for you. So you have to choose how you want to live your life from there. And, that's an individual choice that at some point in your careers, you'll all have to make.
One of the, most people asked me, why do you want to be chief registrar? You already have a job that's great. You're already driving strategy at the judiciary. And my answer was, I want to decide where the money goes and how this strategy gets implemented. But when you try a transition and it's unsuccessful, you have to reinvent yourself. And I think you have to reinvent your role. It has been my greatest lesson. And I'm in the process of that reinventing, and I would welcome ideas. Because I think that the next thing would be to set up a strategy delivery unit at the judiciary and determine the operational plans and the order of priorities. And then the money will follow that, no? Yes. Questions from you?
Wow, that's really, really heavy. Who wants to go first? Okay. So, sir, I don't know if you have a notepad there, but I can maybe pass you the phone so you can.
I can't Let me just
okay, will you maybe let's do 3-3, right? Yeah, sure, I can do that. Just Andrew, maybe you can give me. Here you go. Just give me this. Just do that. All right. Okay. by show of hands so that I see how I'm moving. Perfect. So, are we good? Oh, okay, you sorted it out. All right. So, we take it in batches of 3, or how do you prefer that? Rose, you're the chief moderator. What do we do?
Yeah, let's take a set of 3.
3, okay. So let me start.
Okay, do I need to start? Okay. Hi everyone. Yeah, my name is Livingston Odero. I'm a chief of staff at Terragon Group, a marketing technology company. I have a question to Mr. NZIOKA Waita. With the ongoing debate around AI, what is your take around AI impact for the chief of staff role? And I'm asking this because today in the morning, our chief financial officer coincidentally sent me a video of Saudi Arabia setting aside $40 billion towards AI. And yesterday we were having this discussion at the office around AI and how it's going to change like our technology delivery and our software solutions. And somebody just mentioned, are you guys sure about your jobs? Because it's as a joke, but today, if you talk about the impact of AI in the tech space, it has sort of like revolutionized the whole industry. So what is your take about AI and its impact on the chief of staff role?
Great. Hi. Thank you so much, first of all, both of you, for your wisdom. I feel like this was a condensed MBA class, so thank you. So my name is Waringa. I am a chief of staff at an organization called Synergy, and I've been doing this a little over 2 years now. Question that has come, this theme I think has been touched by both of you when you are both speaking, and I think it's a question that's in many of our minds. Just looking at the room, we're all like very young, or for many of us, as actually you rightly stated, many of us are new in this role, like between 1 to I think you're 4. I think you're probably the most in this room, but please correct me if I'm wrong, throw a stone or something. So my question is specifically, as we're new and coming into the role, and I'll use myself as an example. So I'm currently in the middle of a recruitment process. We said this is a safe space, so I shall share with practical examples, so it can be active learning on the spot. Right, so I'm recruiting currently for, I'd call it a senior chief of staff role. I will not say where, but I will share with you too, and maybe you. So we've gotten to the final stage, and there were 3 people left, and I was one of them. And they have said, no, but let's keep talking. So let me come back to that. But the no part was, you fit the description, you can do what we want, but unfortunately you're a little young. We're looking for someone who is a bit older, you have a bit more seniority. But truthfully, they were telling me, like, truly, if we're looking at just the job and whether you can do it, you can do it. But like, you're the youngest, and we're just not sure what to do with you. So how then would you advise us, as people who have been in this role, you kind of know how to navigate these conversations, how then would you advise us to navigate this scenario as we're kind of now trying to leap and kind of take a next step towards growth? Yeah.
Is that ban by any chance? Is that ban?
Is that what?
Ban manufacturing? Okay, oh wow, congratulations. Okay, sorry. Anyway, it's linked, it's public information that BAN is hiring for a chief of staff in case you're looking to move.
My name is Ben Mokaya. Thank you for the insightful presentation. I work for Basigo. Basigo is at Basigo we're introducing electric buses to Kenya, so you might have seen the swanky looking buses or probably ridden in them. So my question is, and thank you for the engaged talk. That is one of the things that actually made me feel like I need to become chief of staff. I am not chief of staff yet. So my question is, do you have to wait to be seen and picked to become chief of staff? Or can you trust yourself in the role? Because I'm one of those people who believe if you want something, you go for it. So I'm really putting myself forward. And so my question is, do you have to be seen to be picked? or can you trust yourself? And as you're trusting yourself to that role, what are the pitfalls you should watch out for? Thank you.
Was that right? You started there. Just repeat again. 1, 2.
Sorry?
Just repeat that again. If you want to be seen, go for it. What did you say?
If you want something.
If you want something, I'm the person who believes that if you want something, you go for it. So my question is, do you have to wait to be seen, or can you trust yourself in the role? And what are the pitfalls?
You have to be seen.
And then we'll come back for more. That's why we
Good stuff. So let me see the next. Okay, the next table. Okay.
Yeah. Let's hand over to me and then we'll come back.
Okay, maybe we start with Mokaya. First of all, congratulations on Basigo. I think we used to sit with Moses when he was dreaming about going through that process of launching, of going against the Matatu cartels and the bus cartels by introducing something that was completely left field. Your actions should speak for yourself. So, as opposed to lobbying, take on programs, volunteer to take on challenges that require some leadership and some expertise. A chief of staff role is very personal to the principal. So there are chemistry issues that you cannot ignore. If you get along well with your boss and it's something you can talk about and say, look, maybe I can improve how you perform, and this is the job I can do for you. But it really depends on your relationship, because that might be the last discussion you have. You really must reflect on it, because you might be touching on a raw nerve. But your performance ideally should speak for itself, because your job is really to help them get things done. So if it's clear that you've been a catalyst for getting things done, then I guess you're in as good a position as anyone, probably to do that. Then the proximity doesn't hurt. You know the person, you understand them, you go for it. Warenga, I think age, you just have to assert yourself. Let me tell you, this thing, people won't take you seriously. They won't take you seriously. You have to assert yourself. I think the audacity of being able to sit in the role and have confidence, being able to take on parastatal chiefs, I told parastatal chiefs, by the time I'm done, there will be no regal chiefs I'm not going to tolerate. And I said, if I can't get you here, I'll get you through your board. And that's what I did. And for me, dealing with guys who dismiss you before listening to you is something you need to expect. So I think Washuka actually taught me, we're in a meeting room here, and in the first 3 seconds, she had executed her agenda. And there's something to be learned. There's something to be learned from that. You may not have time to dazzle, but really in the first 3-4 minutes, get your point across, do what it is. At some point, an opportunity will open up. But age is a real issue. And it's so funny in Kenya, because we discriminate against old people, and we also now discriminate against young people. So you wonder, what is it that people want? So I guess you just have to be a bit brutish and assertive, and know as a woman you have a double jeopardy, because first you have to assert yourself, then you have to assert yourself, and then you have to moderate so that you don't look too assertive. So challenges ziko mingi. Livingston, my view on AI is a tool. AI is like your laptop. You can choose whether you want to have a laptop or a desktop. You need to be the ones driving what you want out of your AI, because AI is for decision support, and it's not the decision maker. I think everyone should be cautious about that. In organizations, what you want are permutations that you could not have thought of in the time frame that you have. And where AI comes from is the ability to immediately hand you a set of permutations that you then still need to make a reasoned judgment out of. So maybe the issue will be the people who cannot adapt to working with AI are the ones who don't have a long future. So like the guy said, me, I'll never touch a laptop, I don't want a smartphone, I can't do this, I can't do that. The world is not for you, man. Or at least the world where the rest of us live in is not for you. So I would probably say, rather than live in fear of being replaced by a program, you really see what role that program can do to help in decision support. Because ultimately, as a chief of staff, your job is to present options. And if there is a tool out there that helps you create a wider range of options and scenarios that can help you deliver success for your organization, then embrace it by all means and control it and make sure your head of IT doesn't scrap you in the process. You know, there's always a guy who will come and say, we are doing cost saving. That guy, you must never allow him near your boss.
Awesome. Here we go. I think we'll add on more to the three.
Oh, sorry. Oh, sorry. Hi all, my name is Pia. I'm the Chief of Staff at Abojani Investment. So ideally my question is around transitions. I think I really like what the way you defined, you know, being able to not see your value anymore in the value that you're adding. As a Chief of Staff, I find it quite tricky to handle a transition, and this is why, because let me explain myself. So our company is transitioning into a niche media company, and it is my baton as someone who has been in the media space to provide the strategic direction towards that, because that is the vision of my boss. Now, the challenge is, as a Chief of Staff, his expectation is for me not to be involved in the technicality of how that works. So I'm to share the ideas, I'm to provide the direction, but I'm not to be involved in it technically. So my question is, first of all, how do you measure your impact? Because sometimes you find that you are sharing a lot of ideas, you are trying out a lot of new things, but then some things take time before you can actually measure results and actually be able to go to a different place and say, this is what I was able to achieve within this company in the period of time that I was there. And then now onto the technicality bit. As you are not particularly involved technically, then how do you establish authority and say that I have the expertise in this particular field, even though I did not practice it? I was giving the direction, yes, but like I wasn't being actually technical. I don't know if that makes any sense, but yes, that was my question. Thank you.
Super. There are sticky notes. If I'm moving from your table, there are sticky notes, and definitely somebody mentioned this is a mini MBA. So please just give me like about 5 points on just one of that. That's going to be like sort of a glass workboard as we finish. So please make sure you write, and then you can just post it out of there. Just sign off also with your name so we can be able to give you some feedback. I'm told as well we also have some answers in the plenary. So please feel free. If you want to chime in, those youngsters who've been on the boards as well and would like to come in on board. Was there a question on this one? I'm moving over to this side. But Mukona, I'm going to put you on the spot. Please come. I'm saying that because, word on the ground is, you know, who's the next Dr. James Mwangi? So it's only fair you tell us, how is it? Because, I mean, by the time you're Chief of Staff at Equity Group, definitely have something to show for it.
I know his boss, and he should be wise before he answers that question.
Something told me you know my boss. And so if I am perceptive and I can read the room, I will want to play this down I'll want to play these cards close to my chest. But if you're also perceptive and you're reading Equity and what we are doing, and you've been following, then you can almost tell, right? We came from the era of, you know, Nigerian group directors, Muindi group directors. We came into the era of Ugandans, and now we have somebody with a name closer home. If you can read the room. Right? And so it's clear. What I can tell you for free is this. We are very clear that anybody 45 and above is going home. We're all retiring. Okay, I am not 45. But anybody 45 and above is not part of succession. That has been made clear in board meetings, that has been made clear in plenary, so we are clear, and we know that. But if I can steer away from that one because we need to play those cards closer to our chest, I am not spokesperson for my organization, so I cannot speak to it. I'd want to speak to some of the things that we are saying here. I think I'm the one who whispered to you that some of these answers are within plenary. So maybe we could speak to some of these things. I have always been the youngest in the room, as I think the very first chief of staff for group technology equity group. And I am always, we are the one bank that has had 13 CIOs. At one point, we sat down and we decided group strategy is that we need to have 13 CIOs as opposed to one, and then one solid group CIO for everyone. So we had a CIO for every work stream, every department that we had. And so you walk into this cabinet, and I report to now the group CIO. So I walk into this, where's Washeke? Oh, yes. So I walk into this organization, no idea as to what the culture is, no idea as to what it is we've decided, and I find that I'm amongst 13 CIOs, and I need to be chief of staff. I am coming in from a software company, no idea as to what banking does, no idea as to nothing. I was selling software, and I have been tasked to ensure that we whip all 13 CIOs who are coming from a broad spectrum of places. EcoBank, Nigeria, Access Bank coming from KCB, people who have cut their teeth in industry. And you have to sit down and whip them into shape and run strategy and tell them what it is they need to do. Guess what it is you have to do to ensure that you can speak to all 13 and that they can listen to you as authority. As you rightfully said, know your stuff, know your content. You will have to put in a lot of reading, a lot of late nights, a lot of getting ahead of what it is everybody does and know how they do it. So that then you cannot necessarily always be challenged in the room. So you become an authority in what it is you say and be audacious. Take the bull by the horns every day, get up, get into their faces and do what you need to do. Sometimes start fights. Sometimes just start the fight. Take the bull by the horns, start the fight, and then go very quickly back to your boss and say, excuse me, I started this war. This is coming to you. So that then he can always have your back and let him know what you're always doing. Create the relationship. The role is also very personal. So I started as chief of staff to the CIO then, and then I transitioned out of the role into something else and came back. Case being, the person who took up after my boss left, we had no chemistry at all. It didn't work, and it was fine. So then, work your networks, as we said, play the playbook, move, transition, move into something else. Then had to move back. So then, at that point, when he now left, a new CIO comes in and says, hey, you used to do this for that Nigerian guy. And I used to like what you used to do. And then all of a sudden he left and you disappeared. What happened to you? Are you willing to come back on board? And we came back on board. Every experience is different, but at the end of the day, every day you're your biggest cheerleader. Get up. You will almost get fired for advice you give. I almost did twice for questioning a vision that was very dear to my boss's heart. But you do what you gotta do, take your stripes and move. But the answers are within here. You know them. Let's work them.
Thank you, Rupona. Appreciate it. Moving on swiftly. Comment for the moderator. That's well accepted. Questions, comment. I'm now on this board. Who's go first?
Thanks again for this and for sharing your story. So my question is leading from something that you mentioned, in that the COS role is not an end in itself. So that's my question. Like, what is the growth path for a COS role? Because they say if you're a jack of all trades is a master of none. So what's the growth path when it comes to the COS role? And just adding on to what, sorry, I forgot your name, she mentioned, also from an age perspective. So you're wondering, is this a role that you want to take on pretty early on in your career? Because especially on the corporate side, the startup side, this role is becoming more and more common, and you'll find the years of experience that are required is, it changes quite a bit. When you get to the more formal, much larger corporations, BAN, I think I saw massacred at one point recruiting. It was like 10 plus years of being a chief of staff. So yes, that's my question, if I can summarize. Oh, Diana, I'm chief of staff at Pesapal. It's not a role that I ever envisioned myself being in. It's a role that I was promoted into, so I myself am also just learning about the role.
Thank you very much. Now coming closer home, but before I do that, I want to appreciate a special group of people who were mentored by NZIOKA. And I'm saying that because of the project manager in the office. I mean, Michael, John, if you could just please stand. And I need you three to just clap for this gentleman who we could not say thanks behind the scenes. Maybe you can speak on all our behalf.
Oh, no. Good evening. Hi, my name is Mutindi, or Laura Mutindi. I had the privilege of working under NZIOKA. It was a phenomenal 4 years in government. We cannot say many thanks. I worked with Washuka severally, bringing our friendship, so asanteni sana. My career wouldn't have been what it is today if it wasn't for the both of them. Hi, my name is John Kiarie. I had the honor and privilege of working under NZIOKA. We normally say if there were like 10 NZIOKAs, this country would have been very far. So it was an honor. Yeah.
Hi everyone, my name is Michael. I had the pleasure of working under NZIOKA Waita since 2017. I joined as an intern and then became a deputy director. Long nights, but the job had to be done, and I believe by the time we left office, transitioned out, we left our mark. Thank you for the inspiration, and thank you all.
Like I'd mentioned before, my name is Anne Chege. I am an EA to a founder and CEO of a marketing and research firm. My question is around transitions. I love operations and admin. I enjoy systems and I enjoy arranging people into boxes. Yeah, but my biggest issue is with the rise of the chief of staff role in Kenya, EAs are beginning to look more and more like secretaries, unfortunately, where we are reverting back to ordering coffee and other things. So my question becomes, as executives learn about the role, and something I've had quite prevalent here is people don't know what they're doing. For us who've been knowing what we're doing as EAs, and we want to transition through the role of a chief of staff, how do we make our boss see our value in terms of, I've been doing the EA role for different people for about 5 years now. And for myself, the most unfortunate thing is the moment you want to leave is when they realize, you are doing 5 jobs. So now we need to hire 5 people. But how do you make your boss realize that for me to stay and for me to transition, 1, because of your age, and 2, because of probably the educational requirements to the job, that because of my relationship with you just as your EA and the fact that I know who you want to meet in the morning and who you don't want to see in the afternoon, that I would be the best fit to transition to become a chief of staff, whether or not it is a thought
or an idea in the organization, how do you introduce it, one, to your HR, and two, to your boss, so that they don't see like you're looking for more money by changing your title?
That's interesting. Okay. Ashuka, Ruben, and then just to add on to that, sorry, there's always like a conflict of sorts. Sorry, this is my experience. You know, the chief of staff, you know, everyone who's reporting around the CEO's office really ideally has a dotted line to you, isn't it? But you understand at times the EA can get a bit ambitious or can get a bit uncomfortable if your roles collide. So for me, I think, I don't know, NZIOKA Waita, maybe you could just, like, how do you just create that cohesive environment around your principal's office? There is the driver, there is the bodyguard, two of them, for instance, two drivers, for instance, the EO, two. I think at Safaricom now there are two executive assistants, we were two chiefs of staff. You know, how do you just create that cohesive environment? The last one in this session, Robert.
Ruben, thank you. So my question is around high-value relationships, or like senior relationships. A question of retention. I know a lot of us, you know, with our careers, we are increasingly interacting with very senior people. And one challenge I'm realizing when I interact with like peers or people who are just slightly, and by peers I mean by seniority, not age, or people slightly like senior, my retention in terms of keeping those relationships for longer and more vibrant is easier. But keeping that retention with like very senior people is, I'm struggling. So how do you keep senior relationships going for long and more vibrant, also without looking very transactional? Because sometimes you would really want the transactional element to get things done. And a quick second one is, when Laban was speaking and NZIOKA, you were saying like, just asserting yourself. I believe in bringing your full self to the organization, and this involves personality. I don't want to suppress my personality and pick it up when I leave work. So how do you make sure that you also bring your full self, your personality at work, and this doesn't rub your colleagues or your boss the wrong way? Because I also feel the more you suppress who you are, you also don't deliver at your best. So how do you maneuver that? And for me, that is very personal because I work in climate finance consulting. As Laban said, I'm based between Geneva and Nairobi. And in Geneva, I'm also currently doing my PhD. And every time I work with people and they realize I'm very academic oriented, they just box you. You're an academic. And I have to remind them, no, I'm not. I'm ex-McKinsey. I just decided to do a PhD, and most of my work is climate finance consulting. So I find over time that being boxed because of an element of your personality, introverted, extroverted. So I really want to know this masterclass of how do you make sure your personality actually works for you and not against you in your organization. Thank you.
Thank you. Shall we take?
Please, go ahead.
The questions are many. Let me see, maybe let's start with Pia. I think for you, let's go to the starting point of what were you employed to do? So when you are given that chief of staff role, what were the expectations from your boss? Because you must still remember what is true north. So if your job is to shepherd a team to produce a set of results, then you remain a shepherd. Keep them within the guardrails and help them to deliver on a new strategy and a transition into media as per within the timeframes that your boss required, without necessarily imprinting too much of your own thinking, so that you also don't hold these guys back in terms of the number and range of ideas that they want to explore. Because some of us can be pretty persuasive with our way of thinking, and it may not be the right way, and it certainly is not the only way. So I think you need to look at what was the deliverable expected from you. If your boss is expecting a transition plan and it's being produced by the team, then what you do is hold them accountable to time. Let's get this thing done. Can we quality test it? Can we subject it to a focus group? Can we see what peers think about this thing before we take it to the boss and say that the mission is accomplished. That's something I would look at. Staying true to what your JD was. Even though you have the technical depth, I think what advantage it will give you is that you will know when people are taking you for a walk down the garden path. So if you can see these guys joking around, bring them back into line. The office of the Chief of Staff is not something that's hanging in the air. You're a Chief of Staff to someone, not to something, to someone. And that someone has convening power. You must use the convening power of your office to get stuff done. Mkubwa amesema. Until things get done, you know, and you use the threats until they quiver like soap, you know. But with the job, well, anyway, this is just something in management. Never threaten people unless you can actually fire them. If you can't, don't bother, because then nobody will fear you after that. So, you know, if you have the capacity to execute and hang somebody in the streets, then do it to make an example. But if you don't threaten, because then your work will become very complicated. But I know people who whisper into the boss's ear, and organizational changes happen within minutes. You know, be that person if that's how you need to manage activities, but fairly and objectively and with the true north in mind. Right? Because people are employed to achieve a certain set of objectives. It is your job to hold them true to course. Diana. Okay, there are guys who see, and again I say no one has monopoly of what's right and what's wrong. The reason why I say this is not an end in itself is because the reason you've been picked for that job is because you have shown potential to lead people and to get things done. Now, wherever you are picked from, you must have had a speciality of some sort. You are either on one of two sides of the business. You are either on a technical side where you're a subject matter specialist, or you're on the P&L side and you are generating revenue. Wherever you've been picked from, you have been given a helicopter platform from which to view the entire organization. At the very least, you should come out of there a better leader. And the next role you should be looking for is a leadership role. So not necessarily a CEO. You could have been picked for Chief of Staff role as a senior manager, yet there were heads of department or chief directors ahead of you. Your next progression should be, I want to join the EXCO as a substantive person responsible for a particular vertical, responsible for a certain set of results. What makes you suited for that job? The fact that you've had broad-based experience, you know the organization perhaps better than most people because you've seen it from top to bottom. And really that's how I would leverage that role. The kind of exposure you get working with a chief executive, don't waste it on yourself. You really ought to take that experience and use it to build. So if there was something that was seen in you, take your original technical skill sets, add this new experience, and look for growth in a leadership role. Not in an individual specialist or subject matter role where it's just you and your laptop. You go where you are leading people, driving results. That would be what I would look at. There are guys like the big organizations that may be asking for guys with 10 years experience. And typically, the kind of people they are looking at are people from bureaucratic, quasi-government or quasi-diplomatic environment, where actually the chiefs of staff do stay for quite a while, because it is a rank. It is a rank within that scheme of service. So that experience is required, particularly amongst diplomats or people working with the UN types or those kind of organizations. Those are it's something where you will find those people in career roles in that space. In Gava, you're tied to the king or the queen. So if things chomeka there is something called so in the organization, the private sector, you have your organograms, what the board has approved, and stuff like that. In Gava, you have something called the established order. An establishment exists. So there are some roles which have been permanent and pensionable from 1926 when the governor of Mukoloni was here. And they've never changed. Then there are some roles like which come and go. One of those roles is the chief of staff, where a special dispensation is given by the public service to create that establishment and the scheme of service for that particular role. But typically it's tied to the tenure of the person you're working with. So as soon as they go, you go. The next person is not tied to having to fill that role. And it's a challenge with that chief of staff role because your fate is largely inextricably tied with that of your boss. So in the case like the equity gentleman, you know, Mkwana. So Mkwana, you had a guy you were working with, you got along really well, then maybe they grew or they got another opportunity, somebody else grows into the role, they come, they don't see the value or they don't get along, or maybe what they were looking for is just somebody to get tea, you know, and that's not you. So, you know, the role goes. And that's a risk that you must live with in this particular career, which is why I feel it's sort of like a firecracker, where the short fuse, high density, high intensity, high stress, but for a defined period of time. Because you can't also operate on adrenaline for too long. Something will break. Obama had, I think, 3 or 4 chiefs of staff because they would burn out. They would burn out trying to keep him, particularly taking him into his second term. They would burn out because the man was giving ungodly hours. He was having such a punishing schedule. He had so many crises because he was a president without a political majority in one of the houses. So the amount of time he had to spend trying to get bills like Obamacare over the line. You know, one chief of staff actually, his only job was delivering Obamacare, nothing else. So, as I say, maybe it's not something you want to do for too long, but it's definitely a job you need to prepare you for a different sort of leadership. Dan, I hope that covers something. And if you're good at keeping people in box, I mean, if you love the job, I mean, very few people I've met who actually just stand up and say, I love this job and I love doing this structure. I think you just need to be straight up and say, I'm not doing this tea business. I know what tea you like and I'll make sure you get it, but I'm not going to end up doing this. I bring value, I can read your schedule, I know what you need, I know how productive, I know how your things ought to be. This is the role I would like to do. Please hire somebody else to make your tea or to be in charge of that kind of activity, so that they get the full benefit of your enthusiasm, not just your skill set. There are so many people who are knowledgeable, but very few people bring their heart to work. So if they have the benefit of getting your full spirit in the job, then take no prisoners. And by the way, you won't die if you change jobs. The world won't end. You might be a bit broke for a while, but the world won't end. Ruben, okay. You know, senior guys, particularly the more experienced execs, can see through transactional engagements very quickly. Eh? So when you're chasing the guy for a game of golf or for a meeting, and he knows the only thing this person is after is business from my company or whatever, they can see through it from very far. And they have to make a decision, do I have time for this kijana? It's true. Because the guy is like, I know this guy is only interested. But if your conversation sort of spread a little bit more, For me, I really learned at the feet of very many, even James. I'll give you an example. You had a guy, or strategy guy, who came with Kelele Mingi. And he brought something called, what was that funny SIM card that they wanted to introduce? Soft SIM, I don't know what it was. Some rubbish thing which was going to create a big problem for Safaricom. And every time we would listen to the CEO of Equity and his commitment to get this thing done, it would scare the hell out of us. And we said, okay, nobody has the guts to take on James, so leave James alone. Let's go for that other guy. So his head is one of the ones that were hanging on my wall as a decapitated executive, because what he was going to do was going to change our sector irreversibly. We were not ready for it. And these organizations like Safaricom is like a big elephant, getting it to change course. It takes a while. And then Equity had almost like a semi-fintech startup mode where they were attacking the financial services sector from all angles, and nobody was quite sure how to respond. So as a chief of staff, you need to sort of know what is the point of inflection. In those 15 people, who holds the D? Who's the decision maker? Who's the guy with the idea? Whose head do you need? That's the guy you go for. Take him out of play. And the boss has no one to depend on. Don't tell James I said that. But you get the point. Even in your setup right now, you're going to work with all manner of people, with all manner of ideas. Some at some point will just have nuisance value. And they are going to hold you back or hold your boss back from achieving the picture of success that is after. You don't want, in corporations or in government, you can't have a protracted, overt conflict. Because then when you seem to be having a beef that is very public and it's extended, it completely erodes your value as a chief of staff. Because guys will be like, so-and-so is having a beef. You mean you can't remove this guy from... So don't even get engaged. You can't show. And Ruben, I'm getting to your next point. Yes, carry your full personality, but no, don't carry your full personality. Dr. Jekyll and Hyde. You must be different things to different people to get the objective, to get the result that you want. It's unfortunate, but it's necessary. And the bigger the organization, sometimes it's important even for self-preservation. Because the bigger organizations stop relying too much on your technical expertise, and they move more to personality politics, proximity, patronage, and all those kind of things. Because at the level that you're operating, kila mtu is PhD, kila mtu is superstar, everybody is A game. Everyone has brought their A game to work. So the only difference between the guys is who is kissing. Yeah. And how do you fight in such an enemy? If you bring your full personality to work, then maybe it might be used to undermine you. So I think it's more contextual. There are some people who love academics, and you know them. There are people who want intellectual depth in their discourse. They don't want a shallow conversation. Those are the guys you unleash for, and you never know where that relationship can go. But in a place where people really just want to see the end result without knowing the process, then you just take them to where they want to go without basically telling them the mathematics of how to get there. Because they are not, a lot of CEOs and execs are not interested in the how. They actually just want the result. But if you do the wrong how, maybe you might break the system along the way, and you get the result, but then that's the end of the organization. So I think there is an element of EQ involved where you really have to sound out how much of yourself you want to let go. I learned, and maybe this is the difference between, it's a generational difference. because my parents would leave work at the door, as in literally they come into the house, that story ends there. They come home, their parents, they do their thing, but many of them were defined by their jobs. So and so, even you see in the obituaries, Nini were Caltex Oil, so and so were KCB, oh so and so. Your identity is pegged on your job. Right? Now, to what extent does it work the other way around, where you take your personal life into the office? That is it's a Gen Z thing. Because for us, it was always career limiting. Leave the drama at the door. You come into job, do your thing, your other issues. It's only now where counseling and psychotherapy have become mainstreamed into organizational structure. Earlier when we started, a visit to HR was only for, disciplinary or to pick up your barua to go home. But now the organizations are different. So my advice would be very bad advice if I told you, don't carry your full personality, but just be mindful that not everyone is rooting for your success. And that's just how people are. So it's important that you look at the situation that you're in and just make an educated assessment as to how much of you bring, and also how much of you allow people to take away. Because one of the things that you must also safeguard is that bit of you that is important, your family, your friends, your passions. Some of those things are not necessarily for broad-based distribution. But it's an individual decision that you make based on the environment that you're in. I think that is that. Did I miss anything? I think we've covered everything.
What a wonderful masterclass. Really, what a wonderful, wonderful masterclass. And that's why it makes sense to join the Chief of Staff Association. And that's why it makes sense to have, people who have gone ahead of us to speak to us about the realities of the complexities of the jobs that we're in. And we value this conversation so much, and we value your contribution to government, the private sector, to work so much that we have a surprise from London for you. We have a message from the Executive Director of the Chief of Staff Association, and I will read it. It is addressed to Mr. NZIOKA Waita, former Chief of Staff, State House, and it says, Dear Mr. Waita, the Chief of Staff Association is an international professional body for chiefs of staff in leading corporations, governments, the military, and diplomatic corps. A global community of peers who together form a network of trusted and influential contacts, extraordinary people with extraordinary success. Capped at only 500 new members per year, the Chief of Staff Association puts our members in the company of the world's most connected gatekeepers. The Board of Directors has created a class of honorary members to recognize professionals whose experience and background deserve special recognition. Mr. Waita, in light of your significant contribution to the profession while serving President Uhuru Kenyatta's term of leadership, it is my great pleasure to offer this honor to you. Honorary membership affords you access to the association's full suite of services, including our CSE education program and a reserved place at our certification course at Oxford University. Would you kindly take this under consideration and let us know if you're amenable? Honorary memberships are the highest privilege the CSA can offer an individual, and I take this opportunity to acknowledge the Chief of Staff professionals in Kenya for nominating you. Yours sincerely, Trent Smith, Executive Director, CSA. Allow me to hand this over to you.
Thank you. If you asked a question and you spoke, please come to the front. Basically, it's all of us. Please, those guys who asked a question, come to the front. I just want some representation. It's great to have you. Sir, thank you so much. We're really honored and glad to be part of you, and congratulations for Mercy, Ashley. I know I spoke a lot about Oxford, but I'm Strathmore. Did you guys feel like I'm a part of you? Please come onto the photo as well. Thank you. That's just for now as well. I would ask us to do a group photo as well. So please, all the guests, just leave your bags where you're at. Just come right to the front. We'll do a group photo with our chief guest as well. And I want to thank you all so much for being with us up to this hour. So I think we'll organize ourselves. We'll have the two seats, the chief moderator and the chief guest to sit right to the front. Okay. Shortest to the front, tallest to the back. Yes, 100%. Mr. Owen is here. I got you.